Hi, everyone. My name is Brady Rowland. I'm your student body president.
And I'm Will Scholes. I'm a senator with ASPSU in the Student Advocacy Committee.
And our guest needs no introduction. But
Hi, I'm Ann Cudd, and I am the 11th president of Portland State University.
Perfect. I know we promised Carol and Tucker they couldn't be here, but you get me and Will. We're not as, charismatic as them.
Speak for yourself.
But, we can try. Okay. So I want to hear about your, scholarly and career progression, and also, how all those moments led you to end up at Portland State.
Okay, that's a long story because I've had a pretty long career already. But I went to graduate school at the University of Pittsburgh and studied philosophy. I got my PhD in philosophy, and I got a master's degree in economics at the same time. And I worked on philosophy of economics, and I became interested also in feminist theory eventually. But my dissertation was more in philosophy of economics. And anyway, I spent 27 years as a professor at the University of Kansas. That was my first job out of graduate school. And like my husband and I like to say, that was the best solution to the two-body problem. So we both got positions as professors at the University of Kansas. And it was a great place for us to be, to start our careers and to also raise our family. And I worked initially in this area of philosophy of economics, but I became very interested in feminist theory, and through that on questions about oppression and inequality, which is kind of natural for a philosopher of economics also to think about inequality. I worked with a colleague and good friend, Anita Superson, to work on a book called Theorizing Backlash, Perspectives on the Backlash to Feminism. And that was a really pivotal thing to start working on feminist theory and to think about the role of the profession in trying to kind of discipline people to stay within the lines.
Right.
And it made me see the profession of philosophy differently, and that's ultimately resulted in this book on backlash. But anyway, so I spent 27 years at Kansas, and through that time, I rose to the rank of distinguished professor, which is mainly for my research and teaching. But I also became interested in higher education as an instrument of social mobility, right? And I became interested in how can I affect at scale some of the inequality dynamics within society. So that, led me, professors teach students one at a time or one class at a time, and that was a great experience. I have some great students who I still am in touch with, even to this day, from early at my time. But when I think about how can I really have an impact on society at large, that made me think, well, perhaps I should try to be active in higher education more generally, and
Right.
so I decided to go into administration at that point.
Gotcha.
To lead faculty and students, and that led me to a few other schools. But maybe I should pause before I go any farther.
I mean, that's amazing, and that just brought up a question in me, that moment of knowing I want to be a leader, I think is just something that drives you to continue to better yourself and continue leading and do what you can with what you have. And so that kind of leads me into my question about your book, Theorizing Backlash, and how did it feel when it got published? How were you empowered when that happened, or
Yeah. No, it was, the thing is about writing a book and publishing a book is it takes years. So it's always kind of anticlimactic when you
Yeah.
finally get there, right? So I would say that the moment when the publisher said, yes, we're going to go with this project, and then we started, well, I guess we already had reached out to different colleagues throughout to put together the different chapters of the
Right.
book. And I had already written one of the chapters, and the other one I wrote specifically for the book. But it was a great moment for us. It was also, it generated its own backlash. So, but on the other hand, many, the people who contributed to this book, we were the vanguard, right? We were actually doing something new and different in the field and really promoting it. And I would say that, looking back now, 20 years ago, that was a pretty pivotal moment. Not necessarily that we created, only we created, Anita and I, but we certainly were part of the vanguard pushing it forward. And now it's just very well accepted that gender is a central category of philosophical interest. And
it seems like a no-brainer today.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in class and in any sex, gender, queer studies class, it's like there is philosophy behind this, but
right. There weren't
Wow.
queer studies classes then,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So when my first move into administration at the University of Kansas was to become the director of the Women's Studies program. And at the time, that was, so that was in the early, no, it was about 2000, year 2000, so it wasn't the late 90s. And at that time, women's studies was about really studying the work of women, and it was very highly gendered, right? As opposed to what we've kind of evolved to, which is women, gender, and sexuality studies. And that was something that I led at the University of Kansas, was changing the name of that program and its focus to be much more broadly about gender and a much more fluid understanding and conception of gender.
How cool.
Which is the way things have changed, and that's, as you say, it's now commonplace to find classes in that, to find, to consider that to be an important aspect of human experience that we can study from a philosophical or other intellectual perspective.
For sure. That's awesome. Here.
Yeah, and I think definitely in Portland, this is a place where that sort of knowledge is sort of publicized for the first time, and there's a lot of backlash to that in the rest of the U.S. But since the book has been published, it's been 23 years ish. Yeah. How has since then your career, I guess, evolved into what you're doing now?
Right. So I wrote probably my most important book called Analyzing Oppression, and published that in, I think, 2006. Okay. And that was a single author text, and that was about oppression more generally. And I would say that was the thing that most made my name and my reputation and career as a philosopher. But after serving as the director of Women's Studies, then Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, and growing that program from just an undergraduate major to also having a graduate program and eventually a PhD program. Wow. I then went into the dean's office as an associate dean for the humanities at Kansas. And then we had this moment at the University of Kansas where we were doing a strategic plan, and I was asked to be, one of the leaders of the strategic plan, and especially the undergraduate education part of it. And that led to my being the first vice provost and dean of undergraduate studies at Kansas, which really opened my perspective even beyond just the humanities to the entire range of undergraduate studies and the other, professional schools like the nursing school and the business school and things like that, and seeing how general education feeds into that. So we had a really interesting experience at Kansas of reforming general education, and that really shaped my thinking about teaching and learning and education and the role of the humanities in the professions and things like that, and helped me to kind of formulate a vision for that, which then led me to seek to be a dean. And I had the great experience of being the Dean of Arts and Sciences at Boston University, which was great fun. And this was right when my youngest son graduated from college, or from high school, sorry. So he was going to college, and so that's when we could move away from Lawrence, Kansas, and go to Boston. And my husband was very agreeable coming with, especially because when we moved to Boston, we could buy a sailboat, which was his lifelong dream. And so
That's
have a
awesome.
sailboat on the ocean, which was a lot of fun. And so that was another interesting project regarding general education happened there at BU as well. So also giving me another vision about the role that played. And Boston University is a very different kind of school because it's a private university.
Right.
And it's in Boston, and it's right, you can see
can-
Harvard and
yeah,
MIT from,
yeah.
My office there. And so it was a different experience, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But then the University of Pittsburgh, where I had gotten my PhD, and my husband had as well. He's an economist. Was seeking for a provost, and I thought, well, okay, maybe I should try that. That's an even bigger scale at which
Right.
you can impact student lives and student experiences. And so, I interviewed for the job, and I hit it off with the chancellor, Patrick Gallagher, and so he hired me to be the provost. And so I spent 5 years, the 5 years before I came here in August of 23, as the provost at the University of Pittsburgh. And that's the chief academic officer,
Right.
In charge of, all kinds of aspects of student life, student learning, and faculty life and their work.
Yeah.
So you mentioned being interested in general ed specifically. Do you have thoughts on the university studies program here at PSU?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts, but they're pretty inchoate, and they're uninformed at this point, in the sense that I haven't really dug in. But I am really excited about the fact that we are now going to really look into it. The symposium this term, winter symposium, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Is going to be focused on general education. The issues at Kansas and Boston were probably different, but the main things were we wanted to make sure that students could transfer across colleges more easily, and that wasn't happening because the general education was different at each of the colleges.
Right, it's not standardized.
Yeah, and so that was a problem there. And the other thing was that it was not well understood by our students. Like, why am I doing this? What is the purpose? So we worked hard to create a narrative that could be understood by students that drew this all together. University studies is really interesting and a very different kind of general education program. I'm concerned to look especially at how well that works for our transfer students, and how well it works for students who might want to double major or major, or switch from one college to another.
Right. So, according to recent findings in a report called the Huron Report, PSU's current administrative operating model is, quote, inconsistent with leading practice and unnecessarily costly. Many students are concerned that when the final financial sustainability recommendations come out this February, that this trend of overspending on administrative operations will continue. So how do you plan to prioritize student success as you finalize the financial recommendations?
Yeah, so, student success and the student experience is at the heart of everything we're doing. We have just completed a strategic plan, as I'm sure you know, the Future in Focus, and we are and at the heart of that, our guiding commitments are the commitment to a quality education, to access for all learners, to a community ethos of care and well-being. So we've got those really at the heart of that. The Huron's report, which is actually not that recent, I think it was 2022. It was before I came, a year before I came and so it was something that I really studied when I was interviewing for this position and have thought a lot about. What it really says is that we're inefficient. But, the other side of that coin could be overspending. That is, it's not an efficient spend of, we're inefficient. And what we are engaging in our Bridge to the Future plan, which is the name of the financial sustainability plan that we're building. One aspect of that is the operational excellence plan, which is to try to reform our administrative functions, restructure them so that they're more efficient. And the main way of doing that, and Huron's report is not so it's not rare for the Huron to make these recommendations to universities. I've been at other universities like Kansas that also hired Huron to do the same kind of report. But what you do is you try to centralize administrative functions more and try to achieve some returns to scale by having folks providing the services from the central administration to the different colleges. There are upsides and downsides to that, right? People know, so people might say in the different colleges, well, I know very well what these professors need or what these students need, and somebody at the central administrative level won't know that as well. So we need to balance that,
Gotcha.
for sure. But in any case, I think the operational excellence is probably a less significant part of the Bridge to the Future than what we're doing in our academic units.
Gotcha.
So what we really want to do in line with our first strategic priority is to clear pathways for our students to get their degrees efficiently and to get degrees that really lead them to great careers and provide a return on investment. And that's that's probably the bulk of the work that we've been doing so far this year. Not to say that we won't be centralizing some of the marketing and communications or some of the HR work and financial administration work. We will be doing some of that as well,
Okay.
which is what the Huron Report's really about.
Gotcha.
So, in terms of prioritizing student success, a lot of students right now are concerned because they're seeing the layoffs. More recent findings have come out in the Buncis report as well that have stated similar things to the Huron report of, administrative bloat maybe is maybe the right term. But also that apart from that PSU is in generally good financial standing despite the deficit, and they're concerned that people are being, or professors are being laid off, maybe without as much reason as we previously thought. Do you have any?
Yeah, so we are going to be providing a response to the Buncis report as requested by our board chair, Trustee Barry. And we are, so that's forthcoming. But basically the short answer is, first of all, the information that Bunces went off of was old information. Not necessarily his fault. That's what had been published, in time for him to do the report. But it's really key to see multi-year reports and to see the trend. And in fact, there's just really no doubt about it. We are spending down our reserves. We are, by the end of this year, we will be below the policy reserve level, the policy for our reserve level. And if we were to continue spending at the same rate, with the same basic rate of revenue production, we'll be down to zero reserves in just a couple of years. So I don't think there's any doubt about that. And we'll be providing that update as well. And so, it's really important for us to achieve a balanced budget for next year so that we quit spending down those reserves. What we should be using reserves for is for investments in new things, investments in programs that are going to give great outcomes for students. New programs that, for example, AI is huge, right? We need to enable our students to take advantage of that. We need to train students who will, be creating the new chips that AI needs for efficient use of power and things like that. We need to be able to invest in those kinds of programs, as well as many other things too.
Okay, AAUP and PSU will engage in mediation on January 15th and 22nd, right? And that sounds
right.
Yeah. There has been a lot of communication from the union about administrative decisions like the layoffs. And additionally, there's been a lot of misconceptions from student, staff, and faculty around the goals of administration in laying off faculty. So the numbers were updated and it was 17. And, we're grateful it's not the nearly 100 notices of notices, but it still sucks to see a layoff like that. And so we were just kind of wondering, what misconceptions are there around that decision that you'd like to clarify maybe, or around that?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. Losing any of our colleagues to layoff, or even those who are taking an early retirement, is hard for the community, and we're saddened by those decisions that we feel we have to make, and we've tried to minimize the number of layoffs, but the fact is that our enrollment has really declined considerably since our high point of 2012, right, where we were nearly 30,000 students, and now we're, somewhere in the vicinity of 20,000. So, I mean, those are really rough numbers, so don't quote me on that. I realize I just said that in a podcast, but roughly, we've lost almost 10,000 students, and that's a big number. And yet, the number of faculty also went up after the number of students went up in response to that, naturally, and has not come down at the level, that the number of students. So that suggests that we are spending more on faculty. We have more faculty capacity than we can afford or than we need. One thing is that this is forcing us to really look hard at all of our degree programs and say, which of these degree programs are really meeting the needs of our students, of the market in terms of employers, and are programs that students are really succeeding in. So that's one question we're asking. And then another question that we're asking is, how about our scheduling of courses? How is that going? And turns out that, like many universities, but it seems like it's a serious problem here, we have gotten into the habit of creating a kind of hodgepodge scheduling system.
Yeah.
So that classes conflict with each other, and then we have to create redundancies. We have to create extra sections of classes because there are too many conflicts, right? So we're trying to clear that up. You are, I'm sure, aware that we're moving to a new class schedule, right, for the university. We're going to enforce that, so departments have to stick to that, so that it's easier for students to get the classes they need when they need, and for us to keep track of, when will students need those classes in the future as they go forward, so that we can schedule in an efficient way. This is another way that efficiency is really important to save on costs. But what that means is that we will not have as many redundant courses, so we don't have to teach them. And so that's, we do have some excess faculty capacity. Now, it also has to be understood that, so we've had deans and department chairs especially looking hard at those questions. And they've sort of decided they've made judgment calls about where there's excess capacity, in which departments or degree programs is there excess capacity, in which courses. Once that's decided, though, then in fact it's the collective bargaining agreement we have with the AAUP that determines the order of layoff and the timing of the notices.
Gotcha.
Okay, so anyway, that's probably all I can really say about that. I don't want to get myself in any hot water.
No worries.
I think we can probably go a little easier on you now. Are you looking forward to anything in the rest of the academic year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to working with ASPSU to make this a better place,
Yeah.
a caring and place where the students can thrive.
Yeah.
And also meeting other student groups. I know we've talked about, how we can do that, and we've got some folks in our office who are working on opportunities for me to meet more students.
Nice.
That would be wonderful. I'm looking forward to commencement being here on campus for all of our commencement ceremonies, so in Viking Pavilion. And speaking of Viking Pavilion, I'm looking forward to basketball games in Viking Pavilion.
Are you going on Thursday?
I am going on
I'll
Thursday.
see you there.
That will be a great deal of fun to watch the game and to also see the deans playing a little pickup game. And I'm looking forward to, as always, performances in Lincoln Hall and performances by our fantastic music and theater groups and opera. And there's some cool exhibits coming to the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art that I'm looking forward to, and just generally taking advantage of all the events that are here on campus, and eventually seeing spring come. Although it's a pretty beautiful day right now, as we look
Not bad.
I think it's supposed to be freezing next week for the first time, so that'll be fun.
Snow week is coming.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay, so you've been mentioning like Kansas and Boston and Pitt, and I think that all sounds like very adventurous. But what do you love most about living and working in downtown Portland? And like, what do you and your husband do for fun out here? Like stuff like that.
Yeah, so we love Portland, and we literally all our married lives which is like 40 years, have wanted to live out here in the Pacific Northwest, and so we're so thrilled to be out here. We like to go wine tasting. We like to go to the beach. The Oregon beaches are just so beautiful. We go hiking a lot. We now have a puppy, and so we take our puppy hiking.
Oh yeah, we saw your puppy at the park blocks.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
Your puppy is adorable. Now that I'm recalling.
Well, he just had a haircut over the weekend, so you wouldn't even recognize him, but he's still adorable.
Are you bringing him to the market this Saturday?
No.
Shame.
He's too big to ride in the cart anymore. He won't stay in there. and he will misbehave a little bit. But we're still working on training the puppy to be a good puppy.
Oh, that's adorable.
So, yeah, so as you, I'm sure know, our motto is "Let knowledge serve the city." How do you plan to make knowledge serve the city here at PSU?
Well, that's just built into the very DNA, built into the sign, the bridge of the university, and so I just am excited to pick up that legacy and move it forward. So I think first of all, our students are so engaged in projects in the city through our capstone project initiative and through so many internships and things like that. And I think that's one way that we really serve the city and become very embedded in it. Portland's such an amazing, creative, innovative city that I am just so pleased and proud to live in. And Portland State, will thrive when Portland thrives, and vice versa. So, just excited to work with the city.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, President Cudd, for your time today. We were so grateful to talk to you. Any last words, Will?
I think that's it.
Okay, go Vikes.
Well, thank you. Go Vikes.
Awesome.